Welcome everyone, this is On This Restart, and this time we're talking about when we can maybe see Metroid Prime 4, Bayonetta 3, and Breath of the Wild 2 to actually come out. What would be an actual reasonable expectation here? And the reason we're talking about this now is because there's just been this big sort of legal case going on between Apple and Epic, and different information sort of keeps coming out. Not too long ago we talked about how apparently there's a plan, or there was a plan, to put Samus in Fortnite. But now we're getting information that apparently Xbox had this expectation that Bayonetta 3, Metroid Prime 4, Breath of the Wild 2, and even Shin Megami Tensei V would all have been coming out sometime between October 2020 and December 2020. In other words, they thought all those games, none of which have come out, would have all been out already. Yeah, strange how that all sort of happened, but the point is, that was their expectation, and none of these games have actually come out, so it sort of begs the question, when are these games coming out? What is an actual reasonable expectation? That's what we're talking about today. Now before we jump into things, let me very quickly talk about my social media. You may see a few different things here on screen. You can check that all out. It's linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe. So when it comes to this Xbox situation in terms of what they were expecting, the only way for it to sort of make sense to me is to assume that they were assuming like a best case scenario here in order to prepare themselves as much as they can so they can be competitive with Nintendo. So perhaps they assumed that the pandemic basically impacted Nintendo to like no degree, and that Bayonetta 3 was nearly done, that Metroid Prime 4, even though they were starting development, still recycle a lot of assets from the prior project, and both those games were pretty much entirely complete, and Breath of the Wild 2 didn't have some sort of weird sort of development detours and was also ready for the holidays, and that they would come out with all of them to come really strong to compete against the next generation systems. Like maybe that's what Xbox was thinking. That makes more sense to me because maybe they didn't actually expect all that to happen, but they were preparing for a worst case scenario. It just isn't reasonable, I would say. That said, maybe there is some takeaways here. Maybe it is at least suggestive that some of these games aren't that far off. It would be nice because we've been waiting for these games for quite some time. Both Metroid Prime 4 and Bayonetta 3 were announced in 2017, and we haven't seen any actual gameplay footage for them yet. So, you know, it would be nice to finally start to see some of that and for them to actually come out not too long from now. So then, when are we going to be seeing these games? Well, let's talk about Breath of the Wild 2 first, because a lot of you guys may already know what I think on this because I've been talking about it for quite some time already. So my expectation is that Breath of the Wild 2 will be coming out for holiday 2021 alongside the Switch revision. I could be wrong, of course, I know, but that's what I'm thinking. Why am I thinking that? Well, development started back in 2017. They are using Breath of the Wild as a foundation. This is still in Hyrule, so they have a lot to build off of already. We saw what I would call a story trailer back at E3 2019, and story is usually done late into development for Zelda games. And more recently, we've been getting a lot of Bloomberg reports that there is a Switch revision coming out potentially this holiday. It would seem that's what they're sort of alluding to. And historically speaking, Nintendo has used Zelda to push hardware. They did it with the Switch, they did it with the new 3DS, they did it with the Switch Lite. I think it makes sense to bring out arguably one of the best looking Switch games to show off a potentially 4K capable system. It all seems to be sort of coming together, especially when you consider that it's Zelda's 35th anniversary, and apparently there are a lot of plans for that. And AJ Onuma has told us that we will be getting details on the game later this year, which is all positioning it for a big E3 blowout, which is all suggestive that the game isn't really that far off. And even if the game doesn't come out for holiday 2021, a lot of people are thinking that it comes out at least by the end of the fiscal year, which would be March 2022. I guess that's also a possibility. Now, something to note is that there's this rumor coming from Game Over Jesse. I will link his video in the description below, but according to a source from Game Over Jesse, Breath of the Wild 2's localization is pretty much done. So if that's the case, I do think it sort of supports my idea that Breath of the Wild 2 will be a holiday 2021 game. So for the sake of argument, let's say I'm right, and Breath of the Wild 2 comes out November 2021 alongside this new Switch hardware with 4K capabilities. if that's the case, then Nintendo's probably going to come out with other pieces of software to support the system beyond Breath of the Wild 2. Sure, maybe in November it'll be just fine, but what about December? Or what if the system and the game comes out in October? They're going to want software coming out around that time surrounding the system to further support the system. So, and I'm thinking that they're going to want more than Breath of the Wild 2, and that may include, perhaps, Bayonetta 3. So Bayonetta 3, they actually announced development for this game back in 2017. December 2017, but still back in 2017. So it's been over 3 years since then. A AAA game can be made in 3 years, and if it comes out, say, December 2021, that'll be 4 years since its initial announcement, and if you consider that they probably didn't start development the day before they made the announcement, it will likely have been in development for more than 4 years, which I do think is more than enough time to make Bayonetta 3. But we haven't gotten any updates on the game yet at all, so maybe it's a little bit further off. I would say that's certainly possible. I could see the game coming out sometime in 2022. So I'd say that my expectation for the release window for Bayonetta 3 is somewhere between late 2021 and late 2022. Regardless of when it actually comes out, though, I am committed to the idea that we are for sure getting information on this game this year. Why? Well, because Hideki Kamiya, the director of Bayonetta 3, is suggesting so. So let me show you this interview from Video Games Chronicle. So here's the question. Kamiya, here's the inevitable Bayonetta 3 question. You were recently quoted as saying you'd like to provide a public update on the game this year. Is that right? Kamiya responds, it's not really our position to say, but it's January. We've got to have something come out, right? I guess it's safe to expect that something will come out. There's still a lot of the year left, is what I'm saying. So obviously Kamiya wouldn't just come out and straight up tell us that Bayonetta 3 will get a full blowout this year and that it will be coming out this year. But this interview, I think, is at least suggestive that we are getting news, and it does leave the door open for it to maybe come out this year as well. Considering that Bayonetta 3 would be an ideal game to showcase perhaps a 4K capable system alongside Breath of the Wild 2, since they'll need more than just that one game, I think there's a decent chance it does come out for the holiday. But again, it could just come out a little bit later, and I think that would be fine. So Breath of the Wild 2 and Bayonetta 3, I think, are decent bets for releases in late 2021, and if not, sometime during 2022. But Metroid Prime 4 is a different story. So while I'm not saying Metroid Prime 4 can't be shown off to any degree this year, I think there's a chance we do see it this year actually, I don't think this game is as far along as the other two. It just isn't, because while they did announce the development for Metroid Prime 4 back in 2017, they announced the restart back in 2019, early 2019, but still. Maybe they restarted development actually a few months beforehand, since the announcement was in January, perhaps it was around October or November, perhaps. So sure, it's a few more months, but either way, it's still way behind both Breath of the Wild and Bayonetta, both of which started development back in 2017 in actuality. So Prime 4 naturally is going to be behind, and maybe development won't take as long as those games, but still, they have a huge head start here, so I think it's very reasonable to expect Metroid Prime 4 to be taking longer to come out. Which is one of the reasons why I don't think Prime 4 has really any chance to come out this year at all. If it does, I'd be so happy. I would love to be wrong. I think that would then mean that they did recycle a lot of the assets and such from the initial project when they started in 2017, but I just don't think that's likely, even if that is the case, because we haven't seen any Metroid games come out yet, and I think that there's at least one, maybe two others that will come out before Prime 4. And that's this 2D Metroid, which I think will be shown off at E3, and also Prime Trilogy HD. I think those games need to come first. So this year is Metroid's 35th anniversary. I think Nintendo may do something to celebrate that. It won't be like Zelda, not even close, or Mario, but I think they will do something. We did mention earlier in the video how there was this information that there were plans to add Samus in Fortnite. So what I've been thinking is that at E3 we will get this new Metroid game announced, and since there's an actual Metroid game to be seen and looked at and be excited about, at that point Nintendo will start doing other things to market the series. Perhaps they will allow Epic to put out a Samus character for Fortnite. That would do a lot to offer more exposure to the series. And maybe they do start talking about Prime 4. Maybe we don't get a full blowout, but maybe there's a chance we get a teaser trailer and if not E3, maybe later on in the year. At the very least, I'm expecting that we'll get some sort of soft development update, kind of like how we've seen it for Breath of the Wild 2. So last year, when they revealed Age of Calamity, Aonuma came out and said that there will be more details shared at a later date for Breath of the Wild 2 and development's going smoothly, and then they showed off Age of Calamity, and then Aonuma did it again during the February Direct for Skyward Sword HD. They showed off Skyward Sword HD, but they also told us we get details on Breath of the Wild 2 sometime this year, and I think we'll get a full blowout for Breath of the Wild 2 at E3. So I'm thinking something like that for Prime 4 will happen, where they'll at least let us know that development is going smoothly, but there's also the possibility we get some sort of reveal this year. Either way though, it's not coming out in 2021. But that doesn't mean it can't come out holiday 2022. I think there's a chance that could happen. But it is like a best case scenario in my opinion. I think there's also a pretty good chance it could come out sometime in 2023. So let's say this year we get the 2D Metroid game. Maybe in 2022 we get the Prime Trilogy HD, and then in 2023 we see Prime 4 by the holiday. That could very conceivably happen, I think. But some people are under the frame of mind that perhaps Prime Trilogy HD will come out in the same year as Prime 4. So maybe 2D Metroid comes out sometime this year, and then for early 2022 we see Prime Trilogy, and then holiday 2022 we see Prime 4. Maybe Nintendo wants a more condensed sort of set of releases for the Metroid series to keep it more relevant and having more momentum. That's a possibility, but I think a lot of that comes down to how far along Metroid Prime 4 is. So I guess my expectation is somewhere between holiday 2022 and holiday 2023 for Metroid Prime 4. That's what I'm thinking. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Prime 4 could be coming sooner or later? And what about Bayonetta 3 or Breath of the Wild 2? Let me know what your expectations are in the comments below. Anyways everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.